This is episode 9 of English Voiceover in Asia. I am your host, Yui Haruhara. It's been a while, hasn't it? Well, I took the podcast offline because, unfortunately, hosting a podcast on a proprietary service is rather pricey. Now the whole podcast is on YouTube upon popular request. But now is the perfect time to post 3 new episodes, starting with today's guest, Dwayne Tan. Tan is our second guest from Singapore, the first being Christian Lee way back in 2021. Obscure English dubs fanatics may know Tan best as the voice of Joey Wheeler in the Singaporean dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! This was before Wayne Grayson played the character in the 4Kids dub. Tan also played Dalton, Mr. 2, Mr. 3, and Porcus D. Ace in the Singaporean dub of One Piece. Actually, by sheer coincidence, I had an autographed print of Mr. 2 hanging in the background on the video call, signed by the current English voice actor of Mr. 2, Barry Andel. But today, you'll find out Dwayne Tan is an excellent actor and a big fan of Disney projects, and he and I have much in common in terms of content. Without further delay, here's my interview with Dwayne Tan. At least that's what I would say. I had a problem when editing. I didn't realize my mic was not recording during the interview. Thankfully, I have all the questions from this interview saved, so I have those re-recorded on my new mic I bought well after this interview. The last 2 interviews of this podcast do have my audio recorded, so no need to do any re-records for those ones. For real this time, here's my interview with Dwayne Tan. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Dwayne. My name is Dwayne Tan, and I'm from Singapore, and I do voiceovers. Used to do animated voiceovers a bit more, but these days more commercial.
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Singapore.
On LinkedIn, you have a varied list of jobs. What other positions/jobs do you hold or have you held, like writer, translator, etc.?
Oh, I've done a gamut of things. I mean, sort of like a jack of all trades, but master of none. I've dabbled into writing a bit more recently. I also write songs. Primarily more, I consider myself a singer first. Um, and I teach musical theater, which is what I learned in New York back in the day. I used to perform on stage a lot more, 20 years of that, and now I'm helping, kids and some adults to find their voices. What do I do? Yes, of course, as you know, I've done animated voiceovers. That was a part of my history. We don't have them too much now these days in Singapore. The opportunities, that is. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I do at the moment. I'm on radio also at this moment. An English radio station. I part-time, so I'm on air on the weekends. I have a weekend show. And whenever any of the full-timers, take leave or they go down, then I'm in to cover.
What do you do in your free time?
In my free time, I love, watching animated movies. I love Disney a lot in general. Not so much not that I don't love it, but I don't watch the Japanese anime series that much. And I also game quite a bit. I play Overwatch right now. And it's interesting you asked that because I think a lot of it has to do also in some ways with the work that we're talking about today, right? The voiceover work. I mean, there's so much in animated movies. There's a lot in video games, and yeah, it's interesting. I guess the next step for me would be to like be a part of a video game or something. I think it would be so cool. He did. And so yeah, disclaimer. I think if you as a listener are getting started with what's going on, and it's episode number 1 anyway, right? Christian Lee. Yeah, start right there first, I say, because Christian has wonderfully encapsulated everything, in Singapore to do with the voiceover industry and the production of anime dubs. I have one channel for sort of myself, my own personal projects, another channel just to be all Disney about so that I don't bother anybody else anywhere else but that channel about Disney. And I have another one called Dwayne Spin Stop, which is celebrating the local art scene. So I interview many of my peers or celebrities from the industry about the scene. And so yeah, there are 3 different channels that I express myself through.
He and I had a little bit of a chat about cross-dressing and drag here.
Yeah, that's something recent. Maybe inspired by Mr. 2 from One Piece. I don't know, but I do have a drag persona. It's I studied musical theater and I've been doing it for like 20 over years. Um, and I guess there's a part of me, there's a register that's, higher that's not always used. Um, and also I feel, I do enjoy watching performances, like Katy Perry or Madonna in concert or Kylie Minogue, and I sometimes often wonder, why is it that males don't get to, dress up like that or prance around like that? So, in drag, I think it's it's very interesting. You actually learn so much about the other gender as well, in terms of, I don't know, just being in heels, being in a skirt that doesn't allow you to walk so quickly, in a tight skirt. Everything, from shaving your hair to putting on nails, learning how to type on the phone. Like, I can't tell you how many things are different about being in the other gender's sort of body, right?
What got you into acting?
Oh, I don't know. I remember this time when I'm like 12, sitting in my bedroom, and there was this little journal that I got, and at the top it had questions to fill up. It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? One of those little journals that you fill up when you're a kid. And I put, for the sake of fame, I guess, because I didn't know any better. Actor, singer, uh, host, I guess radio DJ, uh, r- writer, and model. So voiceover wasn't there, but I guess it's part of it. So that was where it all started. It was just a very shallow view of what, I guess, you know, an actor would be, and famous and living the high life. So that got me started. But eventually what happened was I started vocal training, and my vocal teacher was someone whom was quite in touch with the industry. So she encouraged me to audition for this and that. And to cut the long story short, I guess that launched the pathway into entertainment. But the interest itself was always there. I actually, not aside from the fame, I think I enjoyed. I used to watch these Mandarin serials on local TV, and that was the point where it got so famous. I guess, okay, so let me explain from the start. Like, in Singapore, we're predominantly Chinese speaking more than English speaking, although everyone speaks English. But there's a huge percentage of Chinese people, and the Chinese TV serials are definitely more popular than the English TV serials. Um, so I think there was a point where the national TV station was trying to do dubs of these Chinese serials into English, um, because there were no English dramas at the time made locally, so they just were gonna dub the Chinese serials. And at that point, when that was happening, I thought, "Oh, that's great. Maybe I'll sort of, like, dub over these favorite shows of mine before they do, some of these other series that they hadn't done." So that was what I was doing for fun, and I really enjoyed it. So I guess that's kind of where it also started with, the lip sync, and matching character expressions on screen. And I used to do it on a tape recorder, so I would have to get it perfect in sync, and then play it back to see if the end result was something that was satisfactory to me. I guess it happened for real. I mean, sometimes I still think about it, and I'm just like, I'm just this little boy in my room, or in my living room, playing around, and now I get to do it for for real. It's crazy. I got started at Odex doing dub overs. I mean, I started in my living room, but then the in between story was that I got back from the US, and my singing voice teacher actually told me, there's a whole voiceover industry that I should look into, and so she encouraged me to put out a demo. So I went to a studio. A lot of studios here are very nice. They let you do a demo in their studio, and they help you out with backing track, and the equipment. So I put it out, and yeah, eventually my voice got around, and I started getting jobs. And to this day, more than anything, I think, acting or teaching, what's continued throughout has been the voiceover jobs, for more for commercials and educational videos and such. But yeah.
What is it like doing voiceover work or acting in Singapore?
I don't really have anything to compare it to really because, it's a part of me wishes to break into the American market a little bit more. And we can talk about that later, but I think also in terms of my accent, I'm not naturally American in a sense. And these days, we're getting more diversified. They're looking for different types of voices. But then again, my voice is so neutral that it's not got that authentic sort of like, you can't even probably tell that I'm Chinese. Um, so in Singapore, how's it been? Well, as you know, having spoken to Christian, a lot of there's no union here. So in terms of what goes, it's pretty much anything. You kind of make your own rules. Although I have to say it's getting better. I guess there are standard rates of pay, um, and I don't have America to compare it to. In the musical industry, I would know a lot better about how America works versus Singapore. But in the voiceover industry, I would think there are no agents here, and so the work that you get is probably going to be based on your relationships with the studios. Um, And I find sometimes you get good directors, sometimes you get people maybe who are young and learning, and the direction is often not as clear. But if you're someone that's more experienced, I guess you can sort of help them out to ask the right questions to figure out what they actually need. So I found it's been a bit of hit and miss that way. Um, but it is very vibrant. There are lots of studios popping out. Sometimes, every other week, I'm like, "Oh, there's a whole new studio that when I'm called to a job, I'm just like, "I've never been here," and that's pretty exciting. But in terms of how it works here in general, if you're talking about commercials, there are the studios, which have the equipment, they record you and they host the session, and basically the clients, like say your McDonald's or Listerine, they go to the studios in general sometimes to find the talents, not so much the agency, because the studios usually have all the database for who the voiceover talents are. However, that's not to say the agency isn't involved. The clients do go to the agency to do the whole ad. It could be if it's a TV commercial, then the agency films it. They hire the models, but for the voiceover part, the agency also writes the whole ad, and the client approves it, and then together with the client, the agency goes to the voiceover studio to look for the right talent. So they'll get several samples of s- three that the studio recommends. So the studio is quite involved in recommending for the right type. So there's a brief, like young, energetic. That's usually what I get, and then the client chooses, and then we're all in together, in the studio to do the recording.
What do you do to warm up your voice?
I don't actually warm up my voice. It's such a funny thing. Um, I used to warm it up more before I sang, which feels like a greater thing to do because to me, in my mind, singing is a harder thing to do. But even these days, I don't. I think I've just found a technique, um, or a way to use my voice that just enables me to just to do it right off the bat, right out of bed, actually. I mean, I'm not trying to show off or anything, but it's just something that is there, and I'm just acknowledging that I think my technique has sort of helped me not be able to warm up because actually, for me, if I do warm up, it kind of thins and wears out my voice, so I don't really wanna warm up that much. Plus, if I'm doing a voiceover as opposed to singing, there's even more incentive not to warm up because if you want those low tones, warming up your voice, for me especially because I have a higher range, it will get me into this sort of annoying stratosphere, and I don't really want that unless a client is specifically asking for that. So I have a really strange also voice. I've noticed I have the higher tier at, like, it's in there, but there's also a sort of a lower tone within that. So it's got both, and I can sort of tweak it. Like if you want it much lower, I can go lower, but if you want it higher, I can sort of take out that sort of bassy sound in it. So yeah.
How did you get your start at Voiceovers Unlimited?
All right, so here's the story. There is a puppeteer named Brian Zimmerman. Back in the day, he lived in Singapore. He was, I think, one of the directors at Odex as well with Chuck. They're good friends, and uh, they found me in the acting circuit when they were auditioning for a puppeteer they needed for a series that Brian was gonna do. That eventually happened, but it didn't happen in Singapore as he was hoping. It happened in Malaysia after his Singapore episode when he moved there. Um, but something else happened for me as a puppeteer. There was a troll that they needed a puppeteer for that was on a resort island in Singapore called Sentosa. And this troll lived in a cave, which was actually essentially a booth that they created for me. And I got that job. Um, it was the scariest job, I would say, maybe even to this day, because it was something I didn't do. I didn't do puppeteering for one, and he was basically doing stand-up comedy routines, and had no experience with stand-up or comedy. And so to put those 2 together, I mean, just puppeteering alone was like a whole handful, like, literally, pun intended. Um, and, and then to get the timing right with the audiences, so that was hard, but in general, that was how I was introduced to Brian, and eventually, Chuck had his deal with Odex, and Voiceovers Unlimited came, um, and that was where it started. And so Brian was like, "Can you audition? Can you do voices too?" Because I did a pretty nasty monster troll voice, and he was like, "Oh, this guy might have some range." So he tested me out.
Oh, look at those people. They might be nice from far, but I think they're far from nice.
So that was one of my little things I pulled out of the pocket when people walked by.
How long were you with Voiceovers Unlimited?
Okay, this my memory may not serve me so well, but I'm thinking probably 3 months full time. So we just sit in the booth. I think Monday to Saturdays. I don't know. It was like a vortex. Like we didn't know time anymore when we were in there. It was just many scripts of we did everything: Mirmo, Masrata Ryuki, Yu-Gi-Oh, One Piece, Prince of Tennis. I don't know, there were just so many titles that we did, the full timers. Yeah, but we churned out a lot. They were, I mean, yeah, I didn't stay too long either because I mean it was quite a sweatshop. But then I also had the musical theater career, which I went back to.
How involved were you behind the scenes at Voiceovers Unlimited? For example, acquisitions and script writing.
No, nothing at all, to be honest. Back when I was an actor, I really had no sense, as opposed to now, of what it took to put a production together. The writing, the translation, just getting the copyright, and casting, scheduling, and all that stuff, and the editing. Um, no, nothing at all. I was oblivious. I just got my script. I highlighted my script. I sat there. I waited for my turn, and I did it.
What was the casting/audition process like at Voiceovers Unlimited?
From my work with the troll puppet, I think I just automatically got the job. I guess to answer your question, the casting process was probably more of like, okay, we've got this character now. Let's see who's gonna voice it, and then they sort of like just throw it around, and then they choose who gets to voice what in that way. So in that sense, you've already been cast for sure, but yeah, the characters are up for grabs. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to just grab someone for a role as opposed to even back in the day in the US, if you look at a cartoon series like, Masters of the Universe, for example, I think you would only have 5 actors on there, and they're playing all the characters.
What was the recording process like at Singaporean dubs?
It used to be one at a time from the early beginnings, from what I remember, and then it became a better idea to sort of have everybody in the booth at the same time, and so they actually built little sections for us, with just plastic, how now you would do it when you have COVID, but back then it was the same thing, little plastic, borders between us so we could see each other, and we just sit on stools. with a music stand in the front with our script and the TV for each one of us. And we would just be, yeah, sitting there in the same room and just recording when our turn came up. Um, and while we were waiting, we'd be reading books or just doing our own thing. I think one of them even like was knitting for a while. I think the syncing was done at the end of the recording if there was need for it, but generally it was synced up during the session, and we did it, pretty much on our own. What helped was because there was a Japanese voice track already, which was matching the lip flaps. You would, as a voiceover artist, have the sense of knowing when that's going to stop somehow. So you're actually while so, we would like to hear the Japanese track on one ear as we're recording, even though it might be distracting, but yet it was helpful because we would know when to start and stop, and so I use that as a guide. And you get good at it, you actually get good at it, like, you kind of just like, "Oh, okay, and then you end up stopping all the time when they stop, or if it ends too early, like, if you end too early and the Japanese track is still going on, we tend to be able to just add little things here and there to make it fill up on the fly, so it became a little skill. So it was a little game almost, it's like, "Oh, no, who's gonna be the one to flub it up," flub this momentum that we had.
When you were recording, did you need to make any adjustments to the script in the booth?
Oh, all the time. I think, as you know, it was a bunch of, I guess, housewives or students that were translating the script, and so that in itself was difficult for them to do, getting the translation. But then on top of that, they had to match the number of syllables, right, per phrase, and so that wasn't done accurately sometimes. And they're different translators, so once you start an episode and like first 3 lines in, you're like, okay, things are not matching. It's probably going to look that way for the rest of the episode. Um, but yeah, so we had to adjust. Sometimes things didn't also make sense because they were doing literal translations, and it wasn't like in context, didn't make sense, so we did have to stop and make adjustments.
When I was talking to Christian Lee, we brought up a Singaporean neutral accent. He didn't know how to imitate that accent. Do you know what that is and or how it sounds?
Absolutely. So I can find a sentence for you to read in a I guess in more a Singaporean accent versus, let's see. So I use my Singaporean accent on radio a little bit more than I'm using now. So I kind of code switch. Um, so okay, so for example, I'll do a Singaporean accent. English script is a Western style of cursive writing. The distinctive feature of cursive script is that the letters in each word are connected with a continuous stroke. The ancient Old English fonts, which were developed around 12th century, so something like that, like that's more Singaporean, but a really Singaporean accent is completely different. Like it's like that's considered neutral Singaporean, as you put. But like a real Singaporean accent would be English script is a Western style of cursive writing. The distinctive feature of cursive script is that the letters in each word are connected with a continuous stroke. So that's more Singaporean for sure. Yeah.
Favorite project or projects you've worked on, be it animation, live action, or otherwise?
Okay, so I guess in musical theater, it would probably be one of the kids shows that I did. Little Red Riding Hood. I played the woodcutter. It's its own adaptation, so he was a little bit mad and all over the place. And I thought what was difficult with a character that doesn't know what's coming and changes his thought process all the time was that the actor had to know all of that, but yet seemed that he didn't. So that was very challenging for me. And he was speaking so fast and so quickly, and his thoughts kept changing. It was such a challenge, but that was ended up being really fun. Voiceover wise, I don't know. Like I pretty much enjoy just voiceovers in general, just getting into a character and yeah, embellishing it. I guess also I did an HBO Asia. It was HBO's first production in Asia, and I was in the first episode. It happened. It's called Serangoon Road, and that was the time where they actually auditioned to be a soldier or a sailor, and they looked at me and they were like, "Can you be a transsexual?" And so they apparently auditioned 100 over people, male and female. They were looking for someone, and I got it. So that was really fun but challenging at the same time. Getting into my wig and cheongsam and heels and everything. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Such an experience. It was great, and that was like one of the more professionally done productions that I've done in my life. Oh, and last one, I think I would have to say, yeah, this was, early in my day, but I didn't know it was such a gem until now. It was called Avatar back then, but in the US, there is a version called Cyber Wars, and it's so funny, I saw it at a Blockbuster. Um, it was in I think the $1 bin, and I was just like, "That's the movie I was in." I told my classmates, and they were like, "Yeah, right." And I'm like, "No, I seriously was in that movie." That was fun. It was like, a $2 million budget film back then in Singapore, and for Singapore, it was huge, and it was sci-fi. It was such an eye opener. There was green screen acting, there were professional in my book, there were, like, these professional, international actors all from different countries, some of the best from each country coming in to be part of the project. So it was for a young kid, it was awesome. Plus it's kind of like my genre, sci-fi fantasy. And the lead, incidentally, Genevieve O'Reilly, she went on in an interview, she actually talked about, oh, this movie is such a Star Wars kind of a movie, and ironically, she went on to do Star Wars. She's like Mon Mothma in Andor, and she was in some of the earlier movies as well, Rogue One, I think, but now she's in the series, so I guess her character has gotten an extension, and she also plays, Moira, who is a character in Overwatch that is the character I play the most, so I hear her voice every day, and it's so cool. One of the bigger names would be probably Joan Chen. She was, in Twin Peaks, one of the leads, and then you've got a Filipino actor, Robert is it Robert? I forget his name now. Michael De Mesa. Michael De Mesa, yeah, apparently back in the day, he was quite something in the Philippines. And then David Warner, I mean, he's been in everything, although he's just one of those actors that, isn't famous, but, there's that link. There used to be a website where you can put, names in, and they use IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, as their, reference point, and you can put any 2 names of actors, and then they'll tell you how many links away from someone you are from. So
It's here I told him he's thinking of Kevin Bacon.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And so I always put my name and some other actor's name, and then it's always through David Warner that I'm linked to the other person because he's done so much.
Have you listened to any American voice actor counterparts to your characters? If so, which ones and what do you think of them?
Sure, just a bit of, say Joey from Yu-Gi-Oh! He's got the Brooklyn accent down. He's cool. He's more like less excited. Um, yeah. I mean, they're the pros, right? Like, what am I doing? I think I listened to some of Mr. Two. Again, very different.
At this point, I was giving a brief primer on the complicated history of One Piece's English releases. We chatted a bit about the series itself and the live action version, which at the time of this interview wasn't out yet. I've since seen the live action adaptation and loved it, but let's not get too off track. On to listener questions. TV4Gate asked, how did you find the voice for Joey Wheeler?
How did I find the voice for Joey Willow? I thought of this cool, surfer dude type of guy. He's blonde. He looked like a surfer dude to me back in the day. I also watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And Michelangelo had that sort of voice, so I sort of just replicated what I thought Michelangelo sounded like. Um, like, cause he used to be like, "Surfs up, dude!" Like, it's like that. And strangely enough, another turtle. I don't know if you're familiar with it, like Crush on Finding Nemo has that sort of voice as well. Like, yeah, when he talks to his son, like, so I just went for that.
Now, I don't know if I mentioned this at the time, but by sheer coincidence, Wayne Grayson, who plays Joey in the English dubbed material of Yu-Gi-Oh! From America, also played Michelangelo in the 2003 TMNT cartoon. Common Rider 64 asked, were there any plans to dub some anime that fell through?
I did dub an anime that didn't fall through. It was actually Singapore's first animated sitcom ever. Um, and I got the job for it, and I was the brother in the family. So it's about a family, a Singaporean family. It's called Heartland Hubby, and you can actually find it. Actually, all of Singapore stuff, because we can't compete with streaming services, right? So the TV station here came up with their own sort of streaming app, and because of that, they've got a whole, you know, catalog of everything that's ever been shown on there. It's called Me Watch. I don't even know if it pops up if you do a search on the store because it's probably a local app. But Me Watch is where everything that's on TV you can watch, and then Me Listen would be all the radio stations in Singapore, which now I get my foreign friends to download and listen to because I'm still on radio. So yeah. Sorry I couldn't answer your question. I came up with the next closest answer.
Suyu Asui is my waifu asked, was One Piece an enjoyable show to work on? Was it difficult or easy to do these voices?
Oh, very difficult because it definitely stretched me as a new actor. I mean, think of, Ace from Ace to Mr. Two, like just getting those voices down, getting two separate characters as well as Dalton. So different. Yeah, definitely difficult to do, but so much fun. I think one of the most cringy things for me would be listening back to, because it's the hardest thing to do to learn how to laugh, and Mr. Two laughed so much. Of course, my laughing's improved since then, but nonetheless, it still was so difficult to do.
Bash Cleezadel asked, do you still watch any of the shows you have worked on in the past?
Um, Sometimes I go back to them. Yeah, I do have the dubs. They're not so easily available. I don't think I found all of One Piece, for example. I have all the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff that I've done. That's, I think, pretty much it. I do have. Oh yeah, I have like Prince of Tennis. I did Miramo, but they're all on VHS somewhere. And you know how that's ever gonna see light of day again. So I don't know if I have all of it. Oh, wait, no, I found them, I think. I have the VCDs, but the VCDs are not complete because I only found a few in the store. There are a few box sets that I bought, but then I think I found quite a few of it on a website somewhere, and I downloaded them. Let's see what I have. I have I have episode 49. Oh, that's all I have till 80. That's all I have. No, well, it's on VHS, like, it's not on my computer, and I don't even like, I mean, I'm who's gonna take the time to dub over well, I basically don't have the time to do it, but it's there, it's somewhere.
So, the Prince of Tennis VHS tapes are boxed away at his parents' place. He and Di were talking about dub preservation for a bit, and he said, as someone who archives unused Disney content, he understands wanting to preserve this kind of content. But now for wrap up questions. If you had the chance to voice any character or be on any project, what would you choose?
I would still love to work for Disney in some capacity, to voice something for Disney. Um, I have worked for Disney, though. I sold merchandise at the Mary Poppins Theater for a bit, and I actually did an opening act for Disney on Ice. I opened the show, I sang for them. But still, I want to do a Disney animated film. And the other thing was, I want to voice a Blizzard character. So it could be on Overwatch, it could be on World of Warcraft. I would love to still voice for one of those characters in the game because I play those games. It would be nice to have it in the history of the game. When you walk around town, you talk to somebody like a non-player character, and it's you. It'd be so cool.
I don't remember what led to this, but he did mention he's played Yu-Gi-Oh before. Give it a listen.
Yeah, I played Yu-Gi-Oh with my cousin because he was like, "Oh my gosh, you're Joey Wheeler. You have to like play a game with me," and totally killed me, right? Like I didn't know what I was doing. So no, but it is cool when you hear your voice. It's like just 2 days ago, I voiced on the subway at the subway stations here. We've got a TV screen and like a few announcements and videos come up, and I just did one strange. I did it in a hostel in New York about being hearing impaired and what this guy was thinking and how other commuters should help him. And anyway, so it's playing right now on the screens, and I just heard it, and I just cheekily smiled to myself, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that's my voice. It's like nobody's gonna know. I'm just like standing here with my backpack, looking like every other, person traveling on the train. It's more of unreal. Like it's sort of like how is that me? It's like how is that voice coming out and that everybody's listening to in that moment?
What are you currently doing?
I'm just teaching children and adults to find their voices. I think it's also as fulfilling as doing the work itself. And I've actually currently just kind of finished writing a musical. It's a long form family sort of Disney type musical. Uh, had a staging of it as in like a workshop read that had a public audience last year. It was highlighted a little bit on BroadwayWorld.com, which to me is like, wow, okay, thank you. So I'm looking to get that produced somehow, staged as a musical, maybe starting in Singapore. Other than that, I'm on the air every weekend. Happy to be, in the public eye in some form because I'm not acting so much on the stage and doing voiceovers, whatever, ads or things that come up. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
What's on the horizon for you?
Nothing. Hope that musical takes off, and if not, I'll just, still be doing my writing some more. I guess the only other thing is like I'm writing a fantasy series, but I don't know if I don't know what's going to happen to it. I usually just write it first, and then if it happens, it happens. If not, I still have a story to share with my friends.
What words of wisdom do you have for prospective actors or anyone else in your field of work?
Have a passion for it. Otherwise, go into it for the right reasons. Maybe you want to touch people, you want to understand life better for yourself, but also be able to look in the mirror and know who you are, because as a product, every a business or a service or a product, it's all about those other things. But as an actor, you're the product, and it can be difficult when people, feedback and criticize you. So you just learn to not take it personally. Learn to know who you are before you, and learn to put your worth in the things that matter, and not in things like, number of likes or number of jobs you have or number of praises you get from reviewers, because all of that is secondary to the work you're doing and who you are.
Anything you would like to advertise?
Yes, I guess, I mean, the only other thing that's probably going a little bit is my Disney Dwayne channel. Yeah, I do movie reviews. I do Disney covers when there are Disney events like D23. I hop down and, upload lots of videos from the event and such. Yeah.
Well, Dwayne, thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this interview.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, Yui. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you again to Dwayne Ton for taking the time to do this interview, and thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, please be sure to rate this podcast 5 stars, if and when it goes back onto a proper podcast service, that is, and subscribe via your favorite podcast app to know first when an episode is posted. If you want to know more about English dubs, check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@yuiharuhara. If you're an actor that has worked in Asia and would like to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to yuiharuhara@gmail.com. If you're a listener and would like to know when I have upcoming guests, please follow me on Twitter @yuiharuhara or stay tuned to my YouTube community tab. From there, you'll be able to ask guests questions that may be featured in their interview. Also, if you'd like to support me further, consider joining my Patreon, patreon.com/@yuiharuhara. Until next time, take care.